Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulihi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsani ila yawmiddin wa ba'd. We'd like to welcome you all to our family night, our monthly gathering, where the goal is to unite the hearts of the Muslim families, inshallah ta'ala. And as you all know, we do a talk before we get down with the food, and then we talk, we chop it up, inshallah. And so we're just letting people online, letting them into our life. So assalamu alaikum to everyone joining online, inshallah. All right, so we like to, as it is family night, we like to talk about things that are related to the family, inshallah ta'ala. So we'll start with a brief talk. Tonight, we'll be discussing 10 ways to become closer to your family. And particularly, we talk about men, but in general, we talk about families altogether. But just some pointers for us as men, because men have the basic responsibility of taking care of a family. So I was looking up some information online, and I came across this site that's called allprodad.com. Allprodad.com. And so brothers, and sisters can go there and check out some information. So they have some good articles, and then they have some statistics. So one of the statistics that they said that one of the biggest challenges, or if not the biggest challenge, if it's not the biggest challenge, it's one of the biggest challenges, and that is what's facing us in the U.S. today is the breakdown of the traditional family. The breakdown of the traditional family. And not even just in the U.S., in all civilizations across the world, the traditional family was the backbone of most civilizations. The traditional family mean a mother, a father, the children, a head of household, someone takes care of the house, and someone is training and rearing and nurturing children so they can grow up and continue that cycle. So some of the stats that he said on the site, it says today, nearly 4 out of 10 first marriages end in divorce, and 60% of divorcing couples have children, and over 1 million children each year experience the divorce of their parents. So divorce between parents could be something very traumatizing, but that doesn't mean that's the end of it. So, but it is a dilemma that we're facing. We're not having enough traditional families. And even if we don't have traditional families, like we just mentioned, that doesn't mean that we can't be effective in parenting. So, and he gives 10 tips of how to become closer to your family, even if you aren't have the traditional family, because we all still need connections, even if we've been deprived of a traditional family. For many of us, our fathers have been missing. Many of us, we grew up in dysfunction. Many of us, we were subjected to a lot of things that caused us to not even have the experience of a traditional family. And yet and still Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us with Islam. And we do get some type of glimpse or some type of structure in Islam of how a traditional family is supposed to go. So I want to take these 10 points real quick and couple them with some Islamic values, because we read all this stuff from these non-Muslims, but it is our values that make most sense. So the first one, he said that one of the ways to fight this challenge of not having a traditional family, he said, for men, that we should be the leaders of our families. And then he said, as the leader of your family, you cannot leave the future up to chance. You must lead, and the people around you are depending on you to do so. So once we become heads of households and leaders, there are people who are dependent on us, and we have a responsibility to make sure that we do everything for their betterment and their well-being. So who can think of anything from Islam that kind of supplements that? Anybody? Like being the leader of the family, something from the Quran and the Sunnah, just as an example.
Men are the maintainers.
Yeah, men are the maintainers. Ayah in the Quran. Rijalu kawamuna ala nisa. The men are the maintainers over the women. But I had an example that I wanted to use. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when he said, "Kulukum ra'in wa kulukum mas'ulun ala ra'iyati." He said, each one of you men are like a shepherd, and you are going to be questioned about what you're a shepherd over. So leadership involves responsibility for your subjects and taking care of their needs. And as men, over our own needs a lot of times. A lot of time, all the time, all the time. So that's an example that, as the leader of the family, as we mentioned before, well, we did mention before, I mentioned it now. A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. So that's what we have to do as husbands and fathers, be able to tackle all of the difficulties of this worldly life and being a beacon of light and a beacon of hope for our families. So basically putting it on our back and just walking through it, walking through the fire so that our families are safe. The second example, he said, is that we should establish family values, establishing family values to become closer as a family. And some of those family values are respect, integrity, living with value, having the meaning and having the purpose of why we're living. We're not just, hamsters on the wheel, just going around in circles. That there's a purpose of all the sacrifices that we're making, all the efforts that we're putting forth, all the hours that we're working, all of the, shortages that we take. There's a purpose for it. And for us as Muslims, it's to return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing that we're going to be questioned about how we were in service of our family. So here's an example from the Quran, the family values. Maryam alayhi salam, the mother of Isa alayhi salam, when she had Prophet Isa alayhi salam, and she was never touched by a man. So when she came to her family and she came with this little baby, they said to her, Ya Maryam, laqad ji'ti shay'in qariba. They said, you have done something that your family has never done before. In other words, they were saying, how did you end up pregnant? Who's the father? When did you get married? Because there was a value in the lineage of their family that they didn't do these type of things. And of course, we're talking about years, centuries ago. But, even now, there used to be a time in this country, like if you got pregnant and you weren't married, what's going on? And now it's come to a time where, if you get pregnant, it don't even matter who the father is, and all of this stuff that's dysfunction that, alhamdulillah, through Islam, we're able to see some of these things. And now in this time in 2023, you can only shake your head, and just be grateful that you're able to recognize it, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave many of us the example to fix it. And then the next ayat after that, this is in Surah Maryam. This is her uncle, said, Ya ukhta Harun, ma kana abuki amra'an su'in wa ma kanat ummuki bagiya. Old sister of Aaron. So he addressed her with a nice title. They didn't just cuss her out. Your father was not a man of evil, nor was your mother unchaste. So they were reminding her with an honorable title, O Ukhti Harun, you come from good people. Your mom was somebody good. Your father was an upright person. He wasn't known for evil. So sometimes we have to instill those family values in our own families. And then for us, many of us, first generation Muslims, we have to take the leadership roles in establishing those values, that we have to impart, we have to create that lineage. And many times we have to break the cycle. We have to break the cycle, I mean, I know for myself and many of us, we've been coming from broken homes. Fathers abandoned us, or fathers were never active and stuff like that, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us a blueprint in Islam to kind of break it. So so they said, this is a thing that has never been done in your family. Somebody having a baby, we don't know who the father is. You just show up on our doorstep. And some of these things we can relate to in these times. So imagine, we know cases of daughters showed up at their mom's house and then they dumped the baby off and they ready to go party. And like, what's going on here? This is not how we do this. This is not how we do things. So there's an integrity factor with our families for us to keep our families together. All right, so the third thing that he mentioned is that we should create the culture of our home. Create the culture of our home. And he calls it the spirit of your home, you know. And the spirit of the home should be a place of respect, love, and togetherness. And so this is something that we can relate to. You ever go in somebody's house and you can feel the energy in there? You know, you could feel like, if something going on, and sometimes you go in somebody's house, and of course, as Muslims, even when we grow up, our mothers taught us, you go in somebody's house, you don't look around, you don't touch nothing, you don't say anything about stuff like that. So there's etiquettes when you go in the house, but then there's sometimes you go in the house, you be like, man, it's kind of creepy in here, it's kind of weird, and sometimes that happens. But a culture of a house is very important. So, uh, we as Muslims have to create the culture of our house where that spirit of love and togetherness. And so, what do you think is the example of that? How do we create that culture?
Communication,
Hmm.
prayer,
Yeah,
cleanliness.
prayer, cleanliness. Yeah. So I ain't gonna drill y'all too much, but yeah, what I was thinking about is the salat. So to create the culture of a good spirit in your home of togetherness, love, cohesiveness is the prayer. And so there's a hadith that's in Sahih Bukhari where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam he said, "O people, pray in your homes," and he meant to pray the voluntary prayers, the nafil prayers. He said, "For the best of prayers are a man's prayer in his home, except the obligatory prayers." So the nafil prayers have the same conditions as an obligatory prayer in the respect that the area has to be clean. You have to prepare for the prayer. There can't be any najas or any impurities in the house. So then, by extension, that the house is supposed to be a place of spirit that's clean, that's comforting, that's warm, that's tranquil. Because when you're praying, it's as if you're standing before Allah, and it's as if you're praying your last prayer. Every prayer is supposed to be like that. So we're supposed to have a place, without any distractions. And the Muslim home should be kind of quiet for the most part. Sometimes you go in the house, and when we were growing up, you go to people's houses and it's a madhouse. In some houses they were so dysfunctional, it was all types of traffic in the house, and people going in, and some of the things that you can imagine children, even some of us have seen, like people arguing all the time, fighting, fussing, cussing. All of this brings bad spirit in the home. So the prayer is the means to establish these values. So the fourth one, he says that as a leader, to bring your house closer is to be present. Is to be present. As one of my teachers said, he said, there's a difference between being a man of the house and being a man around the house. Being a man of the house and being a man around the house. A man of the house is the one who takes his responsibility, takes leadership, makes sure everything is running in order. And a man around the house is just, somebody laying around, and, see how you see some, you go online and, the man is here, he's playing Xbox, he's watching the big screen TV, his ladies looking at him like the trash is piling up. He don't do anything around the house, and then to be wondering where his food is. So that's a man around the house. But a man of the house is going to at least attempt to take care of everything from A to Z. And when we get, a little skilled in our manhood, there comes a point that we are able to see things, and we don't have to be told, you know. And this is an example for our younger guys that just came in. When you guys become men, you can start training now. You see the trash can overflowing, just change it. Don't nobody gotta tell you to change it. You see it, you see the trash falling, just go ahead and change it.
Nobody else doing good.
Yeah, but don't be like some kids, like so I tell my son sometimes, like, I think y'all like being hollered at, man. I think y'all get a kick out of it, because you gonna wait for your mom to get on your top about it when you could have just changed it and earned a good deed at the same time, you know. So be a leader. So the Islamic example uh, of a man that was basically the man of the house, and I would venture to say that he was also around the house, but in a good sense. And this is Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam. So you read in the story of Prophet Yusuf when his brothers went to throw him in the well, and every time throughout their journey, they was always able to go home, and their father Yaqub was there. And you read the story of Prophet Yusuf, every time they came back home, oh father, we lost Yusuf. Then they took them to Egypt, but then they came back. Oh, we lost the caravan. Then they came back again. Every time he was there, and he knew what was going on. He was active. He was present in the house, and that even though they was plotting against their brothers, they were able to come back and talk to their father. So that's being a man of the house. That's a rare example, a man of the house and a man around the house, because the Anbiya, of course, some of them, had occupations, but they wasn't working themselves to the bone, except for Allah. Like, we working, and many times it prevents us from being present. And that's what we have to be careful of these days, that we're working so much that we're not having any time for the nurturing and upbringing of our children. So as the leader of the home, it all starts with you. The fifth one is to live by example. So it is said that you must not only be present, but you must set the example. So sometimes in the old parenting style that some of us we grew up with, it was like they told us to do something. And then like for some hardcore parents, it was like they didn't want to tell you again. And if they had to tell you again, it was a problem, or of a, parent that's a little more tolerant, mostly mothers, they'd be like, how many times? And then they come to where they're screaming on you and then you become frustrated, But for us as parents now, this new age of parenting is really the old way. And we find the old way in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When you live by example, you show in the house how it's supposed to be done, because, children are watching us more than anything else. So when Aisha, radiallahu anha, she was asked about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like, how was he when he was in the home? And she said that he was in khidmah. Khidmah, I mean, he was in service of the family. He was taking care of their needs, So there wasn't an indication that he was looking to be pampered. He was looking to be, fed, because we know the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his example that he was make his own meals, he would sew his own clothes and stuff like that. So when he was home, he was in service. So you can imagine what service is for us today as men, that sometimes if we're going by the patriarchal model where the women just do all that stuff and the men don't do anything. No, when the man is home, even if you had a long work day, you can wash the dishes, you could clean the bathroom, you could take out the trash, you could vacuum the floor. You come in and you assess what the situation is, and it's not a matter about, sometimes we get on our wives or our mothers or anybody, you hear people, you probably heard this before, you've been here all day, what you been doing, And I had a rude awakening about that one time when I was, years ago, when I used to watch my children, and I used to wonder about this when my wife was like, I was like, man, in my mind, I said to her, because, I don't even want to get beat up. So I would be like, man, she been here all day, man. So all this, I worked this job. I done worked 12 hours until one time it came that I had to do it. I had to watch the kids while she went to school. And I tell you, man, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them something special, because I couldn't function. As much as, as men, we think we can figure it out and we'll work, man, I couldn't function. I didn't even know how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich the proper way. So, and then when she came home, it's like, you gave me a look like, oh, you see now, yeah. So I ain't even gonna say nothing else about it. If the house is in disarray, that's okay. I'm going to help. So now we know that's the example of the Prophet ﷺ anyway. So number 6, it says you should control your schedule, that you must be intentional with your schedule and make time for the important things. Make time for the important things. And more important than that, make time when you don't have time or when you say you don't have time, because this is what our children will remember, the times and the moments that we weren't there. You know, you could show up 1,000 times every time, but the time that you weren't there that was important to them, that's the one that they will remember. So always try to make time, you know. And the way we manage our time as Muslims is around the salat. Around the salat, okay, what you got going on, son, or you know, or your daughter, whatever. Okay, I got this, that, and the other. Okay, that's close to the Lord time. That's close to Asr time. All right. Okay, I got to offer the prayer, and then you know I might be running a little late, but I'll be there. You know, so you know you can always make these kind of things, but plan it around the salat and plan it around anything that's dealing with your prayer and your service. You know, and make sure that you make time that is suitable for both of you, whatever the situation is. You know. So the next thing is that when you plan, you should plan with a purpose. You should plan with a purpose. And that you plan with a purpose so you can do the things that you want to do as a family and that you can spend your resources on things that will give you the greatest return. And so it is said that you can tell a lot about a person, what is important to them, by looking at their checkbook and their calendar. You can tell what's important to a person by looking at their checkbook and their calendar. So, in other words, if we know how much we got in our account, you know, and we all do, you know, we can tell right now for the adults, you know, what's pending, what we spent, you know, what we trying to hold on to, withdrawals, and if some unauthorized transactions, we call the bank right away. With our calendars, you know, we should look on our phones. How filled are they? You know, how filled are they? We should become in the habit. Everybody got these smartphones where they already come pre-installed with a calendar, and you know they got you got notes. You can make tasks. You can make events. You can plan. You can schedule it weeks in advance. You know, use that calendar. So if your calendar is not filled up, but your you know your bank statements that you know by heart, you know, kind of balance that out. You know, so the Islamic example is that we should put our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah says in the Quran, فَإِذَا أَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. When you have made a decision, you have decided something already, then put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that means that, you know, many times we say we put our trust in Allah, but you make the decision, you firm on what your decision is, what you thought of in your mind, with the ability Allah gave you, and the outcome you leave to Allah. But what you have at your ability, this azam means like to be firm and resolute in the decision that you make, you know. And when you have made a firm resolution, a decision about what you're going to do, you know, this is how it's going to go, then you rely on the law and the outcome, because none of us know the outcome of our decisions. But we know that we know how to plan things. We know we have the mental capacity to foresee things. And how it turns out, we leave to Allah, you know. Number 8 is we should hold family members accountable. Hold family members accountable. So, and then he says that we should lovingly hold them accountable. And sometimes in that holding them accountable, we might have to make decisions for them. You know, sometimes as fathers, especially and husbands, we have to make hardcore decisions. They call them OG calls, or at least they used to call them OG calls. Do they still use that? What they use now? When you gotta make a decision that's not popular, what's the phrase they use? We got 2 young brothers here. Y'all know? Okay. I think y'all know, but y'all just don't want to say nothing. You know, this whole no snitching culture. They don't even want to talk about nothing. We ain't involved in no crime. They don't even want to talk. I'm asking about baby. That's okay. But we used to call you making an OG call. You making a difficult decision about something that it might not be like, but because you have determination and your vision as a man, then you got to make this call, because you know sometimes there's a thing we know what we're doing. Somebody might not know what we're doing, what plan we have. But when you have a vision and you know what you're doing, and you feel it on your spirit, ride with it. You know, everybody's not gonna go along, and then they have to wait to see what the outcome, just like you did. You know, and if it's favorable, then it worked out. Then you could just pat yourself on the back. If it's not favorable, then that's what Allah gave you. So Either way, you become patient and you're thankful, but you don't ever give up your ability to make a decision when you become convinced about something. When you come convinced about something, say you get convinced about, playing sports or, getting a certain degree. Don't let nobody deter that from you. Just go with it, and whatever the outcome is, you leave it to Allah. You know. So, an example of holding accountability. There's a hadith. A man was in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ, and he told the man, he said, "Kul bi yaminik." He said, "Eat with your right hand." And the man said, "I cannot eat with my right hand." So, can you imagine being in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ, and if it was the case that you couldn't do that, you should act like you could, just out of reverence for the Prophet ﷺ. That's how we revere the Prophet. He gives a command, he says something, we ready to run with it. So this man said, I can't do it. So then the Prophet ﷺ said, may you never be able to do it. And then it was said that this man couldn't raise his right hand after that. So that's something deep. So you can imagine whatever the conditions were, the Prophet ﷺ was giving him instruction in his presence, and maybe it was some type of pride there, or just like I can't do it. What do you mean you can't do it? You can't switch hands? You're supposed to put together a sacrifice because you're in the presence of Rasulullah ﷺ. So it wasn't that he couldn't do it, he refused to do it. And so the Prophet ﷺ, of course, he wouldn't say something like that just out of spite. That's not the behavior of the Prophet ﷺ. He always wanted good for every person. So obviously he saw this man being, belligerent, So he said, prideful. So may you never eat with your right hand. And so he was supposed to know better in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ. Let me, even if I'm, because there are people who are left-handed now, they might use that as an excuse along those best. If you're left-handed, force yourself to eat with your right, Just like if you're playing basketball, if you dribble with your if you dribble with your right hand, they force you to go left, to dribble with your right? So they help you to develop your weak side if you already got your strong side. Is that true? All right. Y'all sports guys or no? No? Well, yeah, at least on Xbox, don't you use both? Or PlayStation? Okay. Alhamdulillah. So hold accountable. The next one, it says that we should remind our children often, or remind our family often. So it says that we should have little reminders of our family values and the spirit we want our house to embody, so that we will keep everything connected and be the top of the mind. They be the top of mind as they are making decisions. So, of course, a great house starts with the mother, right? But keeping the house together as a cohesiveness is the man's job, and sometimes that job involves just loving the mother. There's a saying that says that the best thing a man could do for his child is to love their mother. You ever heard that saying? Yeah. So sometimes just making sure that the mother's mental state is intact, so she passed that on to the children, because sometimes as fathers, we got to work. We got to go out in the world. We got to spend a lot of time away from home in usual cases. But, we come home making sure that our wives and our women are taken care of, so they pass that nurturing on to the children, and we keep that cohesiveness together. So that means information, communication. If we come home, sweetie, how was your day? What did the kids do? Did they get their homework done? Checking up on all situations, and taking them head on when we can, inshallah. So an advice for that is the example of Prophet Luqman, alayhi salam. Prophet Luqman. Some say he was a prophet, right? Some say he was a wise man. And so the example that he gave to his son, he told him, he said, and he addressed him in the Quran, he said, Ya Bunayya. So this is like a term of endearment. Oh my son, Ya Bunayya. So you see, this is the etiquette when we address each other, and you could just compare that to how some of us may have been exposed to how people address us and call us names. I always think of this with Bill Cosby. I know Bill Cosby is not popular, but he did a stand-up comedy one time. He said that when he was growing up, he said he thought his name was Damn It, and he thought his brother's name was Jesus Christ. He said because every time he did something, his father would be like, Jesus Christ, would you come over here? And damn it, you sit down. And then he said one day his dad said, he called him damn it. He said, damn it, get up, come here. He said, Dad, I'm Jesus Christ. You got to watch the stand up to get it. I didn't make it as funny, but it was funny if you see it. Because I don't know if y'all know Bill Cosby was he was a stand-up comedian too. So, I mean, they blackballed him at the end of his life, but that's another story. But just imagine how some parents are talking to their children. And you can just go sometimes, you get a chance, if you take children to school, you go to school, even as students, you hear some parents saying some very harsh language to children, and it's almost like, come on, man. You hear mothers talking to children like they sailors. Didn't I tell you to get me, and these kids, and if you ever watch that, Allah forbid, keep us away from that kind of exposure. But if you ever watch children when they do that, it's like they're processing it and they're taking it in and it's affecting them and the mom don't even know, And it's very common to see that today. It's very common to see that. Not just in school, but in marketplaces, you'll see mothers just talking to especially their boys. They're talking to them, and then when they grow up, then some people wonder why boys don't like the sound of a woman's voice, because he feel like it's reminding him of his mother. Because his mother was hollering at him every day, and that's something we have to pay attention to, and so Prophet Luqman alayhi salam, he gave some advice to his son. He gave some good advices. So he said, establish a prayer, forbid, enjoin what is right, forbid what is wrong. And he said, and be patient over what befalls you. So in that, for the sake of time, I don't want to mention all of the ayahs, but that's the main one, that he told them to pray, to enjoin what is right, forbid what is wrong, means stand up for what's right, be a stand-up person, mean what you say what you mean. And then he said, and be patient over what happens to you. Because sometimes things happen to us. We expect good things all the time, and sometimes Allah will test us with bad things. And that's the time we have to stand tall. And as men, as potential husbands and fathers, we have to be able to weather the storm and stand tall, especially in the face of danger. And so then the last one, he says, to bring us closer to our families and have a cohesiveness and a togetherness, is to have fun. To have fun. Don't make family growing up all about rules and regulations and do's and don'ts and do what I say, not as I do, and then there is no fun involved. There's not an exchange. I remember this narration. I can't remember if it was Umar or it was Ali ibn Abi Talib. May Allah be pleased with both of them. But it starts with children, and the narration said that you should play with your children for 7 years. Then you should teach them for 7 years, and then you should advise them for 7 years or something like that. So from what I remember, it wasn't an authentic narration, but that has a great meaning. So it said from the time they're born up until 7 years old, you teach them, you educate them. Then the second part is that, you play with them. The second part is you educate them. And then the third one is that you advise them. So 7 for 14, they need that education. That is key time, especially in the boys' life, where they learn all of these values. And then from 14 up until 21, that's the time around 14. How old are you, Aki? 14. He's smelling himself. You think you're tough, don't you? Yeah. Yeah. But that's the time where, by the time they get 14, it's too late to try to discipline. We had Sheikh Imad Rahimahullah, who came here a few times. And I'll never forget this story. One time, right here in this musalla, Sheikh Imad was answering questions about family. So a brother said, he said, yeah, Sheikh, what do you do? I said, what do I do with my son? He's 15 years old. He don't pray. He don't listen. So I'm thinking the Sheikh is going to give him some advice, like, what you should do. He said, yeah, Akhi, where have you been for 14 years? That's what he told the dad. He didn't sugarcoat it at all. I was like, subhanallah. He said, he's 15 now. He's not praying. He don't listen to you. He's bad in school. He said, where have you been for 14 years? SubhanAllah. So when we're not present, we're not engaged with them, then they grow up and they become handicapped. And that's what's happening. So for us, and when we know these situations, and we know the Lord who's spent with Allah bless us with this format of Islam, we have to use it to do better. We have to use it to do better than, for many of us, especially as converts, what we've experienced, because most of us, we grew up, our father wasn't there, or we experienced, domestic violence with our parents, or, alcohol and drug abuse. We've seen it, you know what I'm saying? And that it has an effect on us, even if we don't say anything, And sometimes it transfers to, we end up doing some of the same things because of the behavior that we learn from them. And so we have to be careful, especially, and I'm concentrating on our young brothers here, because y'all got next, There's going to be a turn where y'all going to be fathers. Y'all got to navigate, pay attention to some of these things, because you're going to be a father, you're going to be a husband one day, you're going to be a caretaker, you're going to be responsible. So have fun, because being a father now, there's hard times, but we can make them good times as well. So those are the 10 things as advice for, to have some good family values according to this article. And then we just put the Islamic twist on it. So inshallah, that was our talk for the night. We ask Allah to spend with Allah to accept it, make it beneficial, and that we're able to get some jewels from it that we could use in our lives. So this ain't a question and answer thing. So that was it. All right. So we're in there. We ask Allah again to accept it. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.